on the market of racism and anti-Semitism.
We can find many Nazi-like passages in the writings of Marx and Engels where they pour scorn on the Czechs and Hungarians and Poles. Marx didn't like Spanish, for example. He said that Spanish are degenerate and that Mexican are degenerated Spanish.
Marx, we need to remember, was Jewish. He was a self-hating Jew. He rejected Judaism and all the rest, but he was Jewish. And Hitler hated Jews. I mean, this is not a newsflash. Hitler was a passionate anti-Semite, and he saw Marxism as corrupted with a deep-seated Jewish nature. The irony here is that so did Marx. Marx was a real anti-Semite. He wrote about the Jewish problem a generation before the Nazis started talking about the Jewish problem. He said how we had to purge the Jewish spirit from Western civilization, from global civilization. He had horrible racist things to say about Jews and of blacks. And Hitler very much inherited that Marxist analysis when it came to things like Jews and other races.
Sometimes it's hard to tell Hitler and Marx apart. Who wrote that Germany's neighbors should accept the physical and intellectual power of the German nation to subdue, absorb, and assimilate its ancient Eastern neighbors? That's Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, authors of the Communist Manifesto, almost a century before the Holocaust. Hitler's underlying admiration for Marxism was obvious.
When I made the film, I was expecting actually that there will be similarities between Nazism and Soviet communism, but I was actually amazed to discover how similar were those posters, and the posters were so similar that as if one artist had drawn them. Of course, I think it is because they were both, their ideologies were very similar, and their expression, therefore, was very similar as well.
In Mein Kampf, Hitler writes about the Nazi party flag, which is this big red flag with a white disc in the middle and the swastika in the center. Hitler explains quite clearly in Mein Kampf that the red, the big sea of red that the swastika was in, was intended to attract socialists to his movement. But the red flag was the emblem of the communists. That's the reason why we call them the Reds.
But it went deeper than similar ideology and imagery. Until Germany launched a surprise attack on the Soviet Union in 1941, the Nazis and the Soviets worked together. They even put it in writing, signing what was originally sold as a non-aggression pact. But just weeks later, they would invade Poland from opposite sides. It wasn't until much later that we would learn the full scope of the agreement.